nonprofit organization in Cleveland. He recently completed a 3-year certification designed for helping traumatized children. Jim has been working as a medium for 12 years and finds great pleasure in working with spirit. He has sharpened his own mediumistic and psychic abilities by studying with internationally known mediums. He teaches mediumship development twice per month. His ability to engage spirit began at a very young age, but he did not build on these abilities until later in life. Jim is an ordained minister with the Church of the Living Spirit in Lilydale and is also a member of the Lilydale Assembly. And I certainly remember meeting Jim in the ministerial program a few years back now, and just love him. He is just such a man of integrity and honesty, and just shines in everything that he does. So without any further ado, here's Jim Flynn.
Oh, thanks for the intro. That was really nice. Feelings mutual.
Thank you.
So, wow, yeah, it's like, wow, I'm talking already. It's crazy. It's happened fast. So anyway, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see y'all out there. And today I'm actually going to talk about death today. And I know that one of our principles is life is eternal, right? However, there is we do lose our physical bodies. And so when I talk about death, that's really going to be the reference more, because I do believe that our energy moves on. However, having said that, when I brought this topic up, not everyone believes the same things that we do. And it was kind of interesting because, I'm going to speak in Lilydale. Yeah, I'm a minister, I was talking all these things. And some people already know that. But, what's your topic? And I think they were looking for things like, light within, and I was like, death. I'm going to talk about death. And you'd get this, it's kind of a downer. And I was like, no, it really isn't going to be. It's about kind of reframing it and looking at the death of at least our physical bodies through a positive lens. So that's really what I'm here to talk about today. As spiritualists, again, we believe that no one really dies, right? We cross over. We assume a different form of energy. We see the spirit world as a broader plane of existence, right, where individuals continue to evolve. And the cool thing is that once we cross over, we're also able to impact the lives that are still here, right? Because I know that when I've done readings for people, they'll say, that was more healing. I was in therapy for 6 months, and that gave me more closure than I got in 6 months of therapy. So we know that spirit working through us, right, continues to influence the lives of others, even though their physical body isn't here. And so we view death as a transition and not a terrifying event, at least in our spiritualist view, right? And I also see it as once that we cross over, it's an opportunity for growth, right? Further growth, further connection. I've never met a spirit on the other side that was just kind of like, this place is horrible. They confused at the most, right? But sometimes, most of the time it's like there's this divine energy that comes through, and they're talking about how much they love it being over there, and they're seeing the people that they used to live with on this plane. And so it's interesting that we make it a horrible thing, right, in our minds sometimes. I don't think we do so much, but I think Western culture, right? And so even though life continues, there is that loss of the physical presence. And it is a little different, right? I miss people that I've lost, and there's a grieving process that we have to go through, because there is a death of the physical body. And even though we get messages from the other side and we get signs, it's not the same as being able to go out to dinner, with that person that you love, or, call them up on the phone and have those conversations. It's a little bit different. So I guess that can be a challenge. And in that way, the death of the physical presence is what people struggle with. I'm reading a book, and it's a real easy read, and I read it a chapter like a day at a time, because it's kind of like one of those daily reading books, only chapters. And it's Regina Brett. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she's from Cleveland. She's from my hood. And she talks about death being the ultimate spiritual adventure. And then she goes on to say it's also the one nobody wants to take. And the irony is, the only guarantee of life is that one day we're going to cross over. I mean, the only guarantee of life on this plane is that our physical body is going to die and we are going to cross over. Yet we have a lot of discomfort around the topic. People do. A lot of people have a lot of discomfort around the topic. And I know for myself, even because of cultural influence, I've been a spiritualist, I think, for like 14 years now. I'm going to say it's about 14 years. But the first 49 of my life wasn't as a spiritualist. And there were a lot of cultural influences that told me that, you know, don't talk about death. It scares people. Don't be crass. Don't just say someone died, right? That's crass. Say they crossed over or they went to another place. You get those messages. And even when it comes down to doing practical things like planning for your funeral or, you know, no heroic measures or those types of things, writing your will, people get a little weird about that, even though it's inevitable that we're going to need to do that. So that's what my culture taught me, was that death was kind of a taboo topic. And so because 49 years of that, sometimes that still is a button. Even though I'm a spiritualist and I have the beliefs I do, I still sometimes go, oh yeah, death, you know. But mostly I know it's mostly going to be me just missing people. I also think too that when we avoid talking about it, it can lead to anxiety, right? It can lead to a lack of preparedness when the time does come, which will create chaos. So for me, I'd want to acknowledge it as much as we can. I remember, so years ago, I was about 30, I was 32, and my, oh, that's really weird. I just saw this Easter thing and your name, Kathy Smith, was there. That's my sister's name, and she's passed. So that was just a really weird, sorry, I just kind of went, oh, hey. Speaking of getting messages.
Yes.
How about that? With the K as well, so. Okay, sorry, a little distraction, a little ADD moment. I was like, hi. So anyway, it's funny. So when I was about 32 years old, I had a partner whose name was Zach. Zach had a terminal illness, and we knew he was going to pass. I mean, nothing was working, and I wasn't ready to talk about death and celebrations of life and all that kind of stuff. And he'd go in and out of the hospital, and every time he came back, he'd be like, oh, I have a new idea for my funeral. And I'd be like, I don't want to hear it. And he was early on for me, it was like this example that you know, you don't have to fear this. And he had everything in place. Like before he passed, we knew the church. We had talked to the priest. There was a party that was planned. He'd picked out all the food. He had, it was crazy. He had a DJ that put together this tape of music to play so people would be dancing instead of crying. And it is funny because even to this day, if I see chicken satays, I think of him, because that was, for some reason, you know how sometimes people can get a little like obsessed about something? That was it. We heard a lot about chicken satays and all this planning with the peanut sauce. Make sure the peanut sauce is there. Oh, got it. But so to this day, when I see that on a menu, I'm like, oh, hey, yep, we had them, we did it. But bring that up is because I was so uncomfortable with that language at the time. And when I look back, I'm like, God, you know, that was some 30 years ago, but he was dead on, you know, he was ahead of his time, ahead of my time anyway, right? I'm a little bit slower on the uptake, but the bottom line was he dealt with it in a way that we were prepared. There were no questions. Everybody knew what to do, and he felt comfortable about leaving, knowing that he had assignments for everybody too, and knowing that everybody had their assignment. So I think about that, and I think, why not frame you know, our physical passing in those ways, right? So I think the way that we can deal with cultural influence is, as a lot of us in this room are doing that already, right? We embrace spiritualism, and we adapt we have our own culture here. where we talk about, death being a life being a continuation. And so I think that's good. I also was doing some research and I found something called the death positive movement. And I just thought, oh, this is so interesting. And I'm just going to read you what they have on their site. There's a death positive movement encourages open and honest conversations about death, dying, and grief, aiming to destigmatize these topics and promote healthier relationships with mortality. It's not about celebrating death, but about acknowledging its inevitability and embracing the opportunity to live more fully. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a really cool kind of organization. And what they're trying to do is take this negative stigma around physical death. And so they really promote open communication, end of life planning, like I talked about, natural and sustainable burial practices. So we kind of get in a rut over here, right? We kind of, cremation or coffin. But really there's other things people do to celebrate passing and to memorialize that. And they're saying, let's look at some more natural and sustainable. There's people that I believe they get buried under a tree, and then the roots, part of them decomposing helps the tree grow. And I know a lot of people that, me just talking about that, they would be like, oh, don't talk about it. You're giving me the willies. But my God, why not? I mean, it's practical, and it acknowledges life, right? The circle of life. So they have that, and they have some interesting practices. They have something, and I thought this would be a great thing for Lilydale. Maybe they have a thing called death cafes. And really what that is a place where people go and they talk about death and dying and grieving, and over coffee, and it's a cafe, and maybe there's a speaker, and it's in a non-judgmental environment, right? So they have these, and I thought, God, Lilydale would be a great place to have those. We're kind of already there, right? We're pretty open when we talk about that. They also have something called Death Over Dinner, and that it's the same. It's the same as the cafe, and it talks about how they'll have a speaker, they have a dinner, and then people break up into groups and they talk about the topic. So I don't know, I think it sounds great. They also really push art classes for those folks who might be grieving or struggling with the concept of death, because we know art is a great creative outlet. And so that could be like physical art, the creation of something beautiful. It could be creating a poem, anything that kind of falls into that creative realm. So I just thought they're really an interesting group. And when I was reading about them, I thought, boy, Lilydale could pick that up, huh? We could run with that. So they really are, they're trying to shift the cultural narrative and kind of shift from fear and anxiety to kind of embracing it and looking at it as not an anomaly, but as something that is just a normal part of life. So I know for me that I'm not scared to die, really. It's when we start to talk about how, right? Oh, I don't want to die in a plane crash, and I don't want to, we don't get to choose, though. And I think that's where the fear kind of comes in sometimes. It's not that I'm scared to pass. And I think that there's a fear of the unknown around it too. So even though, like I said, I know the other side's got to be beautiful, yet I've not had a near-death experience or anything, so I haven't experienced it firsthand. And so there's a little bit of fear, there's this little like percentage of me that's like, I wonder if I'm going to like it. Like I said, a very small percent, but it provokes some fear. It's a fear of the unknown. So there's other things I think to consider when talking about this. And one is that when we deny death, we also kind of deny a part of life, right? It's because there's that circle of life. And we might not take the most of our time. We might do things like postpone important conversations, right? So in other words, if I'm acknowledging that there's an end, I might start to think, well, there's a conversation I got to have with somebody, and I should probably have that now, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But yet we'll put it off, right? As if we're immortal. And then luckily I haven't had that happen where someone passed and I felt I had to we had to have a conversation before that. But I know lots of people who have, and it's a sad event for them, right? They didn't get something off their chest that they needed to. So so we don't want to deny this part of life, because I think it can kind of take away. Also, again, just kind of viewing death as a natural part of life is going to be important. We know that every living thing, right, from the smallest microbe to the largest whale, physically dies one day, and that energy crosses over. And I think that death, it can actually be a motivator for us to be better people on this plane. Because if you acknowledge that I don't have forever, you also, well, at least I do, have to acknowledge that then I have limited time to do what I want to do, make a difference with other people, have an impact in the world. And so I think that poses a bigger question sometimes, right? Where we go, why am I here? What do I want to do? But I think that when you kind of accept this idea of death, it can motivate you to be a better person. So I want to talk for a little bit about cancer, because I had it, and I'm in remission, which is wonderful. And but I'm telling you that my first thought when I had cancer wasn't to say, hooray, I get to cross over. You know, I'm telling you, I did a lot of bargaining because I wasn't ready to leave. I didn't want to leave. There was people I knew I would miss. I had pets. There's places I still wanted to go. And these were all the things that were kind of flashing in my mind when, you know, that word gets thrown at you. And then of course I was diagnosed during COVID. So that didn't make it easy, right? Because I had to go in and out of the hospital every day for treatments where the hospitals were overcrowded, people were dying. And so it was kind of it was scary, right? And people were like, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I felt that I had to, you know, you can't live in fear. That's just not going to work. And so I had lots of conversations with God and with the angels. I believe in angels. And just saying things like, you know what, if it's okay, I'd really like to stay. I'm not scared to be over there with you, but I'd really like to hang out for a while. So if we, and I know that we don't always get what we ask for, but I also don't feel like it hurts to ask, right? You just never know. So I did that. I embraced a routine. So every morning, I embraced a lot of alternative practices as well. So every morning I would get up, I would stretch, and then I would do a Donna Eden's energy routine. Then I would have radiation, and then I would work. And I was lucky enough that I had to work a lot of evenings, so I was often able to take a chunk off in the middle of the day. And we have a nice patch of woods, and I got to know that patch of woods over 4 seasons. Because of COVID, you couldn't go anywhere but the woods, right? And so I did. I'd go down there, I'd hike. I got to know the trees, the plants, the native animals, the birds. I knew that patch of woods like the back of my hand. I never would have had that gift if I just would have kind of rolled up and said, oh, I'm going to die, right? This is horrible. But what I did is, so again, kind of that having to look at immortality said to me, well, you better make the best of your moment here. And so I did, and it was an amazing experience. It taught me how to be in the here and now. I mean, I was pretty good. I meditated and stuff, but I also, it's really easy for me to like go off into the future about horrible things or beat myself up about what happened in the past. And this whole kind of bout with cancer, where I looked at my I looked at mortality right in the face. It was kind of like, I better start doing some different things. And I think, again, I would never say, oh, hooray, I want to get cancer again so I can be a better person. I would never go there. But I will say that I think it did make me a better person. Unfortunately, that's how I had to learn, I guess. But it taught me how to live in the here and now. It taught me that there's beauty in impermanence. And you know, life's temporary, so make it precious, right? While you're here. And like I said, I feel that the experience was helpful. It helped me be more realistic about looking at death in a more positive way. Very ironically, right? Not everybody would probably walk away with the same experience. I also found, while I was doing my research, that there was an app called We Croak. And if you're younger and you're not, like, croak is a euphemism for dying. And I thought it was interesting because it reminds you 5 times a day that you're going to die. And I'm not sure, I'll say I'm not sure that's the app for me, to be honest. But the people who have it feel like it's life-changing, because what it does is 5 times a day randomly, it'll pop up. And what the folks that have this app have said is that, so here I am, I'm engaging in some negative thoughts, or I'm about to get in an argument with somebody, or I'm debating whether I should take this vacation, and boom, hey, guess what, you're gonna die. And they're like, huh, yeah, how about that? Maybe I wanna switch my thinking, right? Maybe I wanna go on that vacation. So it's ironic that it's kind of a negative message, but at the same time it motivates you, it gives you that thought that, yeah, I'm not here forever, so grab it, right? Carpe diem, right? Seize the day. So I just thought that to be interesting, and I thought, in a way, I don't know that that's the app for me, but in a way, that's kind of how the disease worked for me when I had it. So it was a reminder, do what you got to do now. So just interesting stuff. So I think meditation is really important too. I think that having helps you have an awareness about what's going on in your body, what's going on around you, what you fear, what you don't. So I think meditation is super important in this whole mix as well. So if I were going to kind of talk about some conclusions, I would say that, open up the conversation, have conversations about death and how you feel about it, and get it out there, I think, so that we can start to destigmatize all the anxiety around it. Mindfulness is going to be super important again, and when I talk about mindfulness, it is kind of being aware of when am I kind of drifting into those negative thoughts versus the positive ones I could be having. What is my body telling me? What is my intuition? What is my gut telling me? That's how I got into mediumship, is because I felt like I couldn't listen to my gut anymore, and I started coming here and taking classes, and boom, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, now I've got a lot going on here. So intuition and more happened. So it's really about appreciating the beauty of life when you're practicing mindfulness. Again, that's what that nature moment gave me too, is I got quiet in nature. Usually I'm just hiking through all the time, but I'd hiked the path so many times, it got to a point where I was like, well, let's sit. Let's see what are you missing here? And I was missing a lot. Birds became fascinating. I don't know if that's from that or just getting older. A lot of people, as I've known them, as we get older, we're fascinated with birds. So I haven't. The jury's out. I think it might be an aging thing, but I'm not sure. And then finding meaning and purpose. So again, I believe that when you look at mortality in the face, it gives you a new life. And I certainly feel like I've done that. I've been lucky. I've been able to travel a lot. I've been able to do this. I was in a rock band at one time, and that was really, really fun. Almost had a label too. I mean, we were close. No cigar, but we were close. My vocation, has made me very happy, even though it's tough at times. I've had the privilege to be able to help people recover and get better. And it also too, I think the conclusion is to if you are kind of on the fence, or you're not sure about something in general, not just with death, but read books, right? Listen to podcasts, be curious. If something kind of is bothering you, or you're not sure about something, I think it's a good idea to then explore it, right? Educate yourself, throw yourself into it. And I kind of did that with death and dying. I wouldn't say I'm well researched, but I've definitely looked at it quite a bit. So Regina Brett, again, she in her book, I find this interesting. She said, death is a story that we tell ourselves, and then we have to ask our question, what story do you tell yourself about death, right? What story do you tell yourself? And I had to think, that was something for me to meditate about. And I need to do some more thinking about that. I think I know, but once you get quiet, sometimes you learn something. We learned something. So we know it's inevitable, but it doesn't have to be a source of fear. And by acknowledging it, reframing our perspective, and taking practical steps toward, the acceptance of our physical death, we can live more fully, I believe, more meaningfully. I think it brings great peace too. So it's not about having to be happy about it. It's just about integrating it into our understanding of life. And so with that, I am done. I'm all done.